بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم تلك آيات الكتاب المبين نتلو عليك من نبأ موسى وفرعون بالحق لقوم يؤمنون.
Section 1, The Narrative of Moses. Surah Al-Qasas, verses 1-3. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. 1. Ta. Sin. Mim. 2. There are verses of the book that makes the truth clear. 3. We recite to you some of the story of Moses and Pharaoh in truth, for a people who believe. Summary verses 1-3. The Quran is considered a miracle in Islam and is made up of Arabic letters. The 14th surah of the Quran starts with the abbreviated letters Ta, Sin, Mim, and this form is mentioned for the third and final time in the Quran. There are different interpretations of these abbreviated letters, including that they are signs of the attributes of Allah or sacred places. However, it is widely accepted that Allah used simple letters to create this important book that contains the program for a happy life for humanity. The greatness of the Quran lies in its ability to create such an important product from simple materials that everyone has access to. After the abbreviated letters, the Quran refers to its own greatness and the clear verses that guide people to happiness. This passage is discussing a verse in the Quran that says there are verses of the book that makes the truth clear. The verse is referring to the Quran itself, and the word clear has been qualified as clear content and makes clear the truth from untruth. The passage then goes on to talk about the next verse, which mentions the story of Moses and Pharaoh and is said to be a part of the story that is necessary and true. The phrase for a people who believe is emphasized as a message to believers who were under pressure at the time. The main target of these verses is for believers, and the message is that the Lord who protected Moses and buried Pharaoh's people is able to save the believers as well. The aim of these verses is to inspire and guide the believers.
إن فرعون علا في الأرض وجعل أهلها شيعا يستضعف طائفة منهم يذبح أبناءهم ويستحيي نساءهم إنه كان من المفسدين.
Surah Al-Qasas, verse 4. Verily Pharaoh exalted himself in the land of Egypt and divided its people into sections, weakening a group of them. He slaughtered their sons and spared alive their females. Verily he was of the mischief makers. Summary verse 4. The passage is a commentary on Surah Al-Qasas, verse 4 of the Quran, which describes Pharaoh's oppression and cruelty in Egypt. Pharaoh divided the people into two groups, the Coptic people and the Israelite slaves, and oppressed the latter group. He weakened them and ordered the slaughter of their male children and the enslavement of their female children. This verse serves as a reminder of the dangers of division and oppression, and this was the same policy that had been forming the main foundation of the oppressors in the length of history. The dominion of a little minority over a great majority is often impossible except by the principle of caste division and govern. The verse also highlights the importance of unity and fairness. Pharaoh had seen a dream where a piece of fire came from Jerusalem and covered all the houses of Egypt. The homes of the Coptic people were burnt, but the homes of the children of Israel remained safe. He asked the interpreters of dreams to explain the dream, and they told him that a man from Jerusalem would come who could destroy Egypt and its kings. Soothsayers also told him that a boy would be born among the children of Israel who could destroy his government. Fearing this, Pharaoh decided to kill the newborn boys of the children of Israel. This was an attempt to weaken the children of Israel and keep their women alive to serve them or for their own desires. However, this was a corrupt act and ultimately caused mischief in all aspects of life. It is not clear how many babies were killed in this program, but it is estimated to be around 90,000 to 100,000. The people of Pharaoh believed that by committing these crimes, they could prevent the will of Allah from being fulfilled.
ونريد أن نمن على الذين استضعفوا في الأرض ونجعلهم أئمة ونجعلهم الوارثين ونمكن لهم في الأرض ونري فرعون وهامان وجنودهما منهم ما كانوا يحذرون.
Surah Al-Qasas, verses 5-6. And we have intended to bestow our favor upon those who were oppressed in the earth, and to make them leaders in faith and make them heirs. 6. And to grant them power in the earth, and to show Pharaoh and Haman and their hosts what they were dreading from them. In these two noble verses Allah, SWT, has removed the curtain from his will concerning the oppressed ones, and states 5 affairs in this ground which are closely connected to each other. The first thing is that Allah intends to give them his bounties by saying, and we have intended to bestow our favor. Another thing is that Allah intends to make them leaders when he says, and to make them leaders in faith. The third thing is that Allah intends to make them the heirs of the government of the oppressors, where he says, and make them heirs. The fourth is that Allah gives them a strong and lasting government, and to grant them power in the earth. The fifth is that Allah showed their enemies that which they were afraid of, and they had mobilized all their forces against them, and to show Pharaoh and Haman and their hosts what they were dreading from them. In summary, this passage discusses the will of Allah to bestow his favor on the oppressed. The passage states that when Allah intends something to occur, nothing can hinder it. The passage goes on to say that Allah's will is to give bounties, make the oppressed leaders, make them heirs, give them a strong and lasting government, and show their enemies what they fear. The passage also provides examples of Allah's will in action, such as the actual government of the children of Israel and the government of the Prophet of Islam. The passage concludes that the Imams of Ahlul Bayt as have pointed to the great advent of the government of justice and truth all over the world by Imam Mahdi Ajdaf. Some traditions upon the advent of Mahdi, as this excerpt contains several traditions regarding the return of the Mahdi, who is described as a savior figure who will establish justice and restore order to the world. The traditions are from various Imams and describe the Mahdi's lineage, his return to the world, and his followers. The excerpt also mentions the phenomenon of Rajat, in which some of the Mahdi's followers will return to the world after they have died in order to assist him. The author cites several Shia scholars who have collected and transmitted these traditions. Who the oppressed and oppressors are. This passage discusses the concept of the mustadaf, or the oppressed in Islam. The term does not refer to someone who is weak, but rather to someone who has power and potential but is under pressure from unjust tyrants. The oppressed strive to break free and establish justice. The Quran emphasizes political and ethical oppression and warns against the tactics of tyrants to weaken their prey economically and culturally. The Quran calls on believers to support the oppressed and fight in the way of Allah. The Quran also warns against those who claim to be oppressed but cooperate with disbelievers, and emphasizes the importance of migration to a land where believers can thrive. The Quran supports the oppressed and considers them under pressure believers who are strugglers and in the grace of Allah. The style of all oppressors throughout history is described as not just physically enslaving their victims, but also breaking their spirit and manliness through means such as corruption, drugs, and indecency, in order to maintain their self-interest. However, the divine prophets, including the Prophet of Islam, aimed to awaken the oppressed and teach them bravery and courage, even empowering women to fight against oppressors. The evidence of these efforts can be seen throughout history and in Islamic countries today.
وأوحينا إلى موسى أن أرضعيه فإذا خفت عليه فألقيه في اليم ولا تخافي ولا تحزني إنا رادوه إليك وجاعلوه من المرسلين.
Chapter 2, The Story. Surah Al-Qasas, verse 7. And we inspired unto the mother of Moses, saying, Give him suck, then when you fear for him, cast him into the river and do not fear nor grieve, for we will return him unto you and make him one of the apostles. The ayah tells the story of Moses and Pharaoh from the perspective of the Quran. Pharaoh ordered the killing of all newborn children, but Moses' mother was inspired by Allah to suckle him and then cast him into the Nile River in a box. The passage highlights 2 orders, 2 prohibitions, and 2 glad tidings given to Moses' mother. The 2 orders are: give him suck and cast him into the river. The 2 prohibitions are: do not fear nor grieve. And the 2 glad tidings are: we will return him unto you and make him one of the apostles. According to the Tafsir, one of the midwives who had been taking control over the pregnant women of the children of Israel had a friendship with Moses' mother. When Moses was born, a mysterious light came out from his eyes, causing the midwife to feel an intense love for him and to not wish him any harm. The midwife decided not to inform the government officials about Moses' birth, as she had originally planned, and instead advised Moses' mother to take care of him properly. While the midwife was leaving, some of the spies of the government saw her and decided to enter the house. In the midst of this intensive fear, Moses' mother wrapped him in a piece of cloth and threw him into the oven. The men of government came in and, after searching everywhere, they found nothing there except an oven full of fire. They began making investigations from the mother of Moses, but she did not give anything away. Through divine miracle, the fire was made cold like it was made cold for Prophet Ibrahim a.s. When Moses' mother realized that she had to cast her newborn child into the Nile River as part of a divine mission, she decided to put him in a special box that she would then set afloat on the river. To do this, she went to an Egyptian carpenter, who asked her what the box was for. Moses' mother, being unable to tell a lie, disclosed her plan to the carpenter and said that she was from the children of Israel and needed the box for her newborn son to hide him in it. The carpenter intended to inform the event to the cruel informers, but when he went to them, he became dumb because of the horror he felt in his heart. He went again to the informers, and the same thing happened to him once more. He realized that there was a divine secret in it and made the box for Moses' mother and gave it to her. The story continues with Moses being found by Pharaoh's wife and raised in the palace. Pharaoh's daughter was suffering from a serious illness, and Pharaoh wanted the physicians to cure her, but they were unsuccessful. He then consulted with the soothsayers, who told him that a human from the inside of the sea would come to the castle, and if the patient's body was rubbed with their saliva, she would be cured. When Moses' mother brought him to the Nile River in a box and set him afloat, she felt as if her heart was separated from her and was moving on the waves. However, she remained calm because she knew that this was part of a divine mission and trusted that Allah would protect her child. When the box that was floating on the Nile River caught Pharaoh's men's attention, they retrieved it and brought it to him to see what was inside. When the box was opened, Pharaoh's wife and all those present were struck by the sight of the baby Moses. Moses was then taken into Pharaoh's castle, where he was raised. The passage emphasizes the triumph of Allah's will over the will of tyrants and the importance of following divine inspiration even in dangerous circumstances. It specially explains the parts in which Moses is in the weakest states and Pharaoh is in his mightiest circumstances, so that it shows the triumph of the will of Allah over the will of tyrants in its best form.
التقطه آل فرعون ليكون لهم عدوا وحزنا إن فرعون وهامان وجنودهما كانوا خاطئين وقالت امرأة فرعون قرة عين لي ولك لا تقتلوه عسى أن ينفعنا أو نتخذه ولدا وهم لا يشعرون.
Surah Al-Qasas verse 8. Then the people of Pharaoh picked him up from the river, that he might be unto them an enemy and a cause of their grief. Verily Pharaoh and Haman and their hosts were sinners. It is clear that the men of Pharaoh did not take the baby from the river with the intention of fostering an enemy in their own care. Rather, as Pharaoh's wife stated, they were attracted to the sight of the baby and wanted to take pleasure in looking at him. Surah Al-Qasas verse 9. And Pharaoh's wife said, He will be a joy of the eye for me and for you. Do not slay him, maybe he will profit us, or we may take him for a son. But they did not perceive what they were doing. In this verse, Pharaoh's wife speaks out against the decision to kill Moses, stating that he could bring them profit or be taken in as a son. She successfully persuades Pharaoh not to go through with it, despite his desire to execute the law on all newborn children of the children of Israel. This showcases the powerful role of women in social affairs. The Quran notes that the people involved did not realize that their actions were in accordance with Allah's will, and that even those who oppose the divine plan end up fulfilling it. This is demonstrated through the various stages of Moses' fosterage and deliverance, all of which were done by the hands of those within Pharaoh's circle. The providence and power of the Almighty is not only in that if He wishes to destroy a powerful and tyrannical people, He sends the forces of heaven and the earth for their destruction.
وأصبح فؤاد أم موسى فارغا إن كادت لتبدي به لولا أن ربطنا على قلبها لتكون من المؤمنين وقالت لأخته قصيه فبصرت به عن جنب وهم لا يشعرون.
Surah Al-Qasas, verses 10 to 11. And the heart of the mother of Moses became void. She was about to disclose it had we not strengthened her heart so that she might be of the believers in our promises. 11. And she said to the sister of Moses, Follow him. So she watched him from afar while they did not perceive. The peace of hearts is in the authority of Allah, SWT. Peace of mind and rest of heart are among the signs of faith. The passage explains that Moses' mother's heart became pharik, or empty, which means that it was void of everything except the remembrance of her son. This was especially important given the intense fear and sorrow that she felt after sending her child on the waves of the Nile. However, Allah strengthened her heart, using the Arabic word rabatna, which means to strengthen and guard, so that she only remembered her son and believed in the divine promises that he would be returned to her as a prophet. As a result of this strengthening, Moses' mother was able to endure this great event and trust in Allah's plan. The next verse implies that Moses' mother regained her calmness as the result of Allah's grace, but she wanted to know the circumstance of her child. This passage describes how Moses' mother instructed his sister to follow him after placing him in the Nile. The Quranic term kusiyoho means seeking for the traces of something. Moses' sister watched over her brother from a considerable distance while he was rescued from the Nile by some of Pharaoh's servants. Some commentators suggest that Pharaoh's servants took Moses out of the castle in search of a nurse for him. Despite the rescue, Pharaoh and his followers remained unaware of the event, as indicated by the repeated Quranic sentence they did not perceive. This repetition may suggest the irony of Pharaoh claiming divinity despite his ignorance of the events and his fight against Allah's will.
وحرمنا عليه المراضع من قبل فقالت هل أدلكم على أهل بيت يكفلونه لكم وهم له ناصحون فرددناه إلى أمه كي تقر عينها ولا تحزن ولتعلم أن وعد الله حق ولكن أكثرهم لا يعلمون.
Surah Al-Qasas, verse 12. And we already forbade on him all foster mothers errant until his sister came up and said, Shall I guide you unto the people of a house who will take care of him for you and they will be benevolent to him? If Allah does not wish something, a large system such as that of Pharaoh is impotent to supply it as the food of a baby either. The most elementary things, such as sucking milk of a sucking child, is also done by Allah's will, and if He does not desire, it will not happen. When an arrogant person was discouraged, he might easily accept the guidance and suggestion of even an unknown fellow too. However, the will of Allah was that this child would return to his mother soon and make her heart calm. Pharaoh's officials searched for a foster mother for the baby, but were unsuccessful until Moses' sister recommended a woman from the children of Israel who had lost her own child. When Moses was presented to her, he immediately accepted her milk, indicating that she was the chosen foster mother for him. The officials were overjoyed and Pharaoh's wife was also happy. In some Islamic narrations, it is said that Haman, the minister of Pharaoh, suspected that the woman was Moses' real mother, but she explained that her milk was sweet and the baby had not accepted any other foster mother's milk. Imam Bakir, as in a tradition, said, It did not last longer than 3 days that Allah returned the baby to his mother. 27, Tafsir Safi, Volume 3 under verse 40 from Surah Taha. It has been suggested that God prohibited Moses from drinking milk from any other source because it may have been contaminated with unlawful substances such as stolen or corruptly gained properties. By drinking only pure milk, like that of his mother, Moses could resist such impurities and stand up against wrongdoing. Surah Al-Qasas, verse 13. Thus did we restore him to his mother that her eye might be refreshed, and that she might not grieve, and that she might know that the promise of Allah is true, but most of them do not know. This passage discusses the story of Moses, emphasizing the importance of fulfilling divine promises and the wisdom of Allah's plans. It also highlights the significance of the return of Moses to his mother, regardless of his title or position. The details of how Moses was cared for during his childhood and his relationship with Pharaoh are debated among commentators. However, it is clear that Moses lived in Pharaoh's castle for several years before leaving and encountering a conflict between two men.